All right, Touch of Gray Part 2 or Round 2. If you have seen on my channel that just last week I posted Touch of Gray solo, going over it. The same thing is, this video is the same. I'm going to try to be more concise, no preamble if we can, which is a preamble right now, but no preamble, and let's get right into it as fast as we can so we can make this one a little bit tightened up, a little more serious than the last video. I think some of my antics did a little bit of a disservice to the video, and I wasn't as polished up on the solo as I wanted to be. So let's go over some more things today in maybe a better order. So here we go. Touch of Gray, number one, what are the chords that we are in question here? If we wanted to do, we're trying to learn chord tone solos. Why are we using a song to learn chord tone solos? Because I think it's easier to see into what somebody else did versus trying to just come in from no man's land. You may be inclined to just, it's typical with guitarists, we when we're learning, we think there's so much special sauce into what's going on that we skip the simplicity and make things way more complex, and it becomes like this impossible task that you don't know if you can accomplish or not. So let's see how Jerry approached a chord tone solo here. And why do I think it's a chord tone solo? Because this chord sequence, the chords that we're responsible to solo over, have one chord that's out of the key. So one scale will not cover sorry about the barking dog. Something always happens as soon as you hit record. Anyways, one scale would not cover when you got to the A chord. So that being said, scales aren't really going to be chord versus scale. It's where every guitarist goes, but it's not really going to be what's going to give you the freedom to solo here. And if you find the scale that's for the other three chords, and you noodle around with it, it'll be okay. And maybe you can put some Jerryisms, throw them in to kind of give it like a little bit of a sound. It sort of doesn't really work when you do it that way. And as soon as that A note or A chord comes up, you're gonna hit some wrong notes for sure. As well as, the scale is gonna have 3 notes that are great per chord, and a couple notes that are not so great. So if you're just kind of going anywhere in a scale, it's going to be hit or miss, and it's not. You're going to wonder, why does Jerry solo like pop and sing with the song? He's creating melodies that stay with the chord tones or outline the chord tones. And that's what makes that melody like pop out and sing and sound like he knows what's going on. And we're going to go over a couple other techniques, like playing over the chord changes, that you can see how it's done through this solo. So that's why, that answers the question of why chord tones versus just thinking as scales. Now, when I'm not saying to forget the scale. The scale is the background information is what a lot of guitarists are missing when they're constantly going, okay, chord scale, what chord, what scale, which is great for playing in modes, but not necessarily for to pop out of a solo like this, especially when there's a chord borrowed from another key. Now that being said, you could say, well, that scale only has to, let's say you knew your theory and you knew all about it, you could say, well, that scale just moves down a whole step. So you could think about, scale here, scale here, scale here. But that A chord, outside chord, is so fleeting that it would be almost a waste. He really only jogs over 1 or 2 notes before he's back into the other key, the original key. So you really wouldn't need to think all of that information while you're trying to pull a solo off in quite an up-tempo piece. So that's another reason why you would want to approach this from a chord standpoint, not a scale standpoint. And you're going to see that it's actually rather easy to do when we get into this. So let's go. Now, the first question we should ask is, okay, so we're going to be soloing over chord tones. How many different chords am I going to need to be responsible for? That answer is 4. So there's a little bit of a break right there. We're only responsible for 4 chord tones, or 4 chords. And you might say, well, Mark, gee, that song sounds like it's got so many changes. There's more than 4 chords in that song. Well, the part that the solo goes over only consists of 4 chords that are arranged in what I'm going to break up as 5 different loops of these chords. They're rearranged differently in each one of these 5 bits. And the treatment you give is different, is why I break these up, to get an understanding of how to approach this and why it happened the way it did, and an easy way that like you could do this in if you were making up your own song. And it gives a variety to the song, only using these 4 chords. Now there's these other chords in the song come into what I think is that the verse or something, or the chorus or something like that. I'm bad with those terms, but it's a lesson to me, the Abels and the Bakers and the C's, or something like that. And that's not in the solo. It's just the other part of the song. Great. So what are these chords then? And here they are. What are these 4 chords that we're responsible for? So you want to know B major, F sharp major, A major, and E. Some things you can catch off the bat. It's like a square of chords. The B and the F are on top of each other, or the F sharp is on top of the B, and the E is on top of the A. If you know your chord scale, which is the chords made up of off the major scale, and the pattern that they make, major, minor, minor, you know the deal, or you should know the deal. You'll know then that there's no place, especially if you kind of memorize these things like I do by patterns on the guitar, there's no place where you have 4 chords together. If we think of the key of C, we've got C major, F major, and G major as the major chords in that scale. There is no B flat major in that scale, which if we just move that progression down a half step, we've got the progression we're talking about, the B, the F sharp, and the E major all can be considered as one key during certain parts of the song. But then there's that A, which is out. Now that A occurs with the E, and the B is mostly occurring with the F. So just a little bit of theory about why that chord progression can even work together, because, hey, how do keys are so important. Why does a chord out of a key work? Because there's relationships, and what your ear and your brain will split up, ear kind of means brain, is that you're hearing 1-5 relationships. 1-5 is like the most common relationship in all of music. As you study this, you'll hear it all the time, and if you start trying to peek into the jazz world, you'll constantly hear 2-5-1, 5-1, 5-1. It's so common. 5 is where you go, 1 is where you come home to. Especially when you're considering 1 as the 1 from the major key, the do of do, re, mi, fa, so, la, ti, do. So we've got operating as a 1, 5, 5, 5. Then you got the E, something like that. We'll get actual in a bit. The E and the A work together as another, you can consider that like a 5, 1, 5, pretty much. It doesn't really matter, but that is one of the reasons why it works. So now the trouble comes when you try to solo over it. You're going to need a plan of action. Chord tones can get you over the hill way easier than thinking about a bunch of scale stuff. chords way easier. So let's go over these 5 sequences then that we're also going to now solo over with these 4 chords. So there's an intro to the song which comes up, so that should be sequence number 1, but we're going to consider this one as sequence number 1, and it goes, must be getting early. I'm not singing in tune, I'm just going to speak it out, so I'm not going to try to sing here. So, must be getting early. The B, 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 F sharp, B, E, E, A, fleeting, E. If you see those jump 2 chords in this progression are quick and fleeting. He covers them, and he covers them with quick chord tones and jumps back to the other chords. We'll go over that. So that's let's say that's part number 1. Number 2, right when you're done cycling that, I believe, must be getting early, clocks are running late, paint by numbers, morning. Clocks are running late, paint by numbers, mornings. Oh, then we get into part 2, which is paint by numbers, morning sky, looks so foamy. Okay. Now it goes back again, loops around that same thing, both of those a second time. But we don't need it. We just covered those, so we're going to move on. And now we'll cover them in order in the solo. We're going to go to the part 3, which is now he starts on the F. Sorry, I skipped a part. So let's go over with the lyrics because that helps me remember what's going on here. So by numbers, morning sky, looks so phony. So there's the F, B, E. Okay, so what we've got here, you may want to write this down, is B, F, B, E, A, E is our first loop of chords. Then we finish off that set of lyrics with F, a little extended, it's I think a bar and a half of F. Then we grace the B, it's alright, or, what is that? Okay, so now we get to the I will get by. I will get by. That's a bunch of walking up, where I don't want to go into a tangent and make this video longer by explaining that. You can learn that in another, maybe I'll do a part on that. So, F, B, and E. He does that twice. So that kind of solidifies that as its own little part, which is basically the same progression, but the F and the B share more, they're split equally in this round of chords, and that's the part where it's okay. So the final bit is, or 2 more final bits. We got the intro to cover, but that part, it cycles through that twice. I will get by happens twice, and then it goes I will get A, E, F. So there's that A thrown in there for a little complexity and great sound, right? Make it cooler. And from there, it morphs into the intro part, which is that we all know how the song starts. And from there, the solo is over, and we go into it's a lesson to me. So, time to get into the solo and how we made it work. So, we know that when the time comes for the solo, it's the first progression, F, B, or B, F, B, E, A, E, twice. That's starting up, so, sorry. So, B, quick F, and E. I'm just going to say F. We mean F sharp through the whole thing. They're all major chords, just so you don't get confused. So, B, quick F sharp to B, E, quick A to E, and the second part there, F, B, E. So, to start with, we've got, here's the solo. He rips into, sorry, and we got the settings a little bit too distorted, but, so what's all that about? Well, actually, I skipped a whole part. That's where the solo starts, but where does this come from? How can you easily get this? Let me go over a couple things here. First of all, where am I going to play the solo? I'm going to play it right here on the neck, which is basically around this scale here, which is usually referred to as the Dorian shape. Starting on B, B major, and that's like the background information that you should have for the scale in your mind, but we don't need to think that. So what I've seen is watching live, this is my 12th fret, by the way, this is my 12th fret, by the way, with the big leaf on it. Since I'm playing a guitar without the fret dots, it may make it a little hard for some viewers to go, where the heck even is that? This is the 12th fret. So this is the B note. There's a square of notes right there. Our square that we've gone over in if you're familiar with this channel, then you know about the square of notes. Square. So, he's gonna dance around. What I saw is Jerry playing it mostly in this area. Maybe a little bit up here, but in the solo of the live version I saw, he's gonna just go and do his own thing, come back to memorable bits of the solo when the time comes, but he's gonna riff around. So what we're dealing with is the studio version of the solo here, which gives us a nice standard platform to see how he made a radio hit, pop. So we want to find these 4 chords in this area. Do they exist? Yes, of course. You can find these 4 chords almost anywhere in a group on the fretboard. And since the solo sounds like it's, and that's a nice easy place to play a solo, we're going right here. So we need to know where the chords are right there. Now, the cool thing is there's a hidden element to the song right in front of our faces that spells it all out for us. What we know is this. We hear this when the song starts. The B, the F, the E, and the A that we talked about. And it's occurring down here. So you can figure out for yourself these chords up here, but you don't have to, because Bob Weir, the other guitarist in the Dead, was playing those chords up here. Cool. He was playing his rhythm part. And that's kind of the secret here. And kind of, I think what kind of like had me struggle at first to go, oh, gee, how does all that work? Where did Jerry come up with these notes? Until I watched the video and go, oh, look at what Bob Weir's doing. He's over here. Those little triads he's hitting are what you need. He's where Jerry got all those things he did are coming from right from these shapes that we're going to know here. So we need to know 4 chords, and I'm going to do 4 chords, but we're going to use 6 positions. I want to know 2 places to play the A and 2 places to play the E, because those get a little bit of a different treatment in the solo. So we've got for the B, which is a triad, a 4-3-2 triad, because it's the 4, 3, and 2 strings. So they're called 4-3-2 triads, and this is an inversion, but we don't really need to know that. We just need to know our triad shapes, which are we don't really need to go over a triad lesson here, but there's basically 3 shapes you're responsible for, which come from this chord. I'm going to actually go over that when we can figure all that out, right, sticking with the actuals of this, so we don't go off on a tangent here, actuals of the solo. So this 4-3-2 is like, say, 13th fret, 11th fret, and 12th fret. Now, where does that come from? How do we know that's a B? Well, in that particular shape, the bottom note is the root of that chord. So it's 3, 5, 1. 5 is always above the 1, so that's how we know that. And so it's on a B, so that's a B chord. Where does that come from? That comes from the C shape. It's actually the C shape, but because the C shape uses open strings, it's not readily apparent that that's actually what it is to new people. But I'll show you here. We have C chord. Let's move it up to D. Well, we can't use that open string, or we could, but we don't want to, so we're going to go like this. Now you can see we've got that 4-3-2 chord right there. Oh, okay. So let's move it up to E, F, F sharp, G, A, which we'll use in a second, and B. And we're right up to that 3-note triad. Okay, so we've got the F. Where does it come from? This F bar chord right here. That's the A from Caged. By the way, these are when I call out these larger shapes, that's from Caged. And then we move down to get the E. And we've got the A, which is right here, also using that same, what we just went over. And just some further thinking, the bottom of this 4-3-2 C-shaped, C-derived shape is the D shape. So you can even think of that, or that should just be in the back of your mind as part of the A chord, but not necessarily, or of that shape, basically, when we use it for the B or the A. Not, it comes up, so keep it in the back of your mind. So, for example, the B chord here, and the D shape, C shape, we'll call that the C shape. Now, you can see what Bob Weir is doing. It goes F, or B, F, 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 so he goes... Morning, sky, looks so phony. You know, dawn is breaking everywhere. Light a candle, curse the glare. We need an F, draw the curtains, I don't care, 'cause E is alright. Then it's F, B, and E. F, B, and E. F, B. Now we want A, E, F. Now for there, we're not going to use the A and the E that we just went over down here. We want to know these are the other 2 shapes I talked about. We're going to use the A up here. Super simple. It's a straight line of notes coming out of the A shape. Same as it's an octave up from this one down here. The A we all know. A major. It's the... all we need is these 3 notes. E. We've got a angle of notes here. This is the first time this shape shows up. One of the 3 triad shapes that exist on these strings. There's only 3 of them to know. I mean, you can probably dice out some more, but I mean, there's minor and stuff. But for major, there's there's only 3 shapes. For minor, there's only 3 shapes before they repeat. Anyways, so that comes out of the E bar chord. So yeah, and back to the start of the song here. So mostly I think that goes back to the F. Let's get there in the solo. So now that we know that what Bob Weir's doing, so we know that that solo starts on this. Must be getting early. Clocks are running late. So what does Jerry do? The first part of the solo starts right over that exact chord shape. He goes. So we go, because we got time over the B, but then we've got a fleeting bit over the F. He goes right over those 3 chord tones and steps right back into the B using 1 note. And now it's right, goes right into E over A, so we go, now we need an A. So here's where like scales wouldn't work, because over the A, it's just, it's out of, in 2 4-beat measures of music, I think that's only 2 beats. So he only uses 1 note and a half step up from, it's great voice leading, a half step up from that E chord is the note A, because E major has a G sharp in it. The E, G, the third, in this shape, when it's straight up and down, the middle note is your 1. So on top of that is going to be the 3, and that G sharp 3 leads into the A. So then he goes this, he's sliding right back into this, so he's just using this and this, just like the Bob Weir chords for the solo. So we slide back up, we're going right back to F, we're into the F, B, E part. So he goes, so what's that about? Well, think about where we're going. We're going to B, we've got more time over F, we've got a fleeting bit of B, and then we've got to get to the E. So he goes F, and what I'm going to do, instead of calling out the actual note names I'm playing, I'm going to call out these notes as I think they apply over the chord. So F, F, he hints at the B, uses this, B, step, E. Now that step is something there's some information in that step where it's a great step in the B chord, because you're right in between the, let's look at the B arpeggio that works here, even though we'll play it here later. If we think of it in a line of notes, you can see that that note in the middle is a great step in between the 1 and the major third. Not only that, but that middle note is part of the F arpeggio that we're coming from. So that's why it makes a great step note that he uses quite a bit to jockey back and forth in between these chords. So he goes. Now, I might not be totally spot on with my accuracy of, but it's pretty much that as we transition from the F to the B. Step, B, that's the third of B. But I play it down here thinking of the B triad there with the D shape. Now, from there, it hits the E. Now this is where we give the E a different solo treatment, is what I'm going to call it, because in this part of the riff, the E is not in conjunction with the A. It's all alone. So he wants to, basically you've got more time to play over the E, and to paint a melody over the E. So that's what he does here. So instead of going back down here for the E, which would also be kind of boring if it just kind of went back and forth between the same spots. So for variety, here we are going. Now that'll come up again in the solo, so let's go over what it is. It's sliding into the 3 from the chord tone below, which is the 2. So the natural 2. So 1, 2. He goes from 2 major 3rd, root. Awesome way to paint. Nail that chord change is that, you know, make the melody pop over that chord change by nailing the 3rd to the root. And now he really quickly goes, which kind of makes gives some interest by, you know, hitting the root again, but kind of falling away a bit, which also gives us a hint of the chord of the moment is a E major 7th chord, not a flat 7th chord, which it kind of would be if it was operating with the A, then it's kind of like the 5 and a 1, but here it's just a, and it's kind of cool to just kind of, even if it's not really doing all that, just to fall away from the E for a second and jump back gives you some contrary motion, which is used a lot more. We're going to go over that in the solo. And nails that chord tone once again. But now what happens from here is really cool. Jerry just continues a flurry of notes over the next chord changes, thereby basically he's playing over the changes. So if you wanted to learn playing over the changes, here's another great bunch of devices, those devices here to learn that technique. The lines just don't stop as the chords bounce from F, B, and into another E. So let's take a look. We went over. Now it's a total Jerry signature move right here. Why does Jerry use his signature move right here? Couple reasons. He's got time. He wants to outline the E and not be boring about it, and a great time to put not only a riff, but a signature Jerry riff. Now, what I mean by signature Jerry riff, Jerry, I noticed, was more of these pull-offs of big notes, big chromatic pull-offs. And everyone hears that and knows it's Jerry because not a lot of guitarists figured out how to inject that into their solos, and Jerry knows just where to do it. And we'll go over the mechanics of it in a second. And what Jerry kind of doesn't do is what other guitars are. That's how to sound like everybody else. And everyone else was popularizing at the time, name it, Clapton, Gilmour, Alex Lifeson, everyone, Jeff Beck, and everybody bent strings. Everyone, Robin Trower, name a guy. There was great bends in their solos, great, but no room for too many more benders, I think. So a great way to become your own signature guitar player, like Jerry did. So anyways, let's look at that really quick, because there's a lot of interesting, I think, a lot of interest in that little lick there. So we got that. How does it work? And that's what we really want to know. Why does it work in the solo? Because we're hitting notes that are totally not even in a scale. So how does that work? Well, they're chromatic passing notes, and they're quick, and they're creating stepwise motion. And also there's a direction change at the end. So we have stepwise motion, which leads us into a direction change. I do see that my file size changed, but that usually doesn't mean that will be a glitch in the matrix at this moment. So just in case there's a skip in my voice, that's what happened. So anyways, stepwise motion. We've got, we start with what note do we start with then to make this happen? Well, we're going to the E, so we kind of want to start with the next available chord tone and walk toward the E. So that would be, now that note can work in there because it's fleeting. It's just part of the process of getting to the E. But it's more involved. He's actually pulling off past the E. and goes back to the E. So I'm going to go a little deep here, but there's really some things that really make that work. And when you got stepwise motion, basically you've really created a direction there. These notes are now falling down chromatically. So maybe the expectation in the listener's mind is that this is going to go, right? But if that were to happen, he stopped on the 7 of the chord, which is which is a tense note, but in the chord. And it's a hop skip right back into the chord tone. So not a problem note. But that stepwise motion creates this expectation that you're going to continue, but if you were to continue, the melody is going to go off into no man's land really quick, because beyond that you have a flat 7. So you're totally changing the dynamic of the chord. If you hit this note, total different sound, works in different places over different a 7th chord, a dominant 7th E, which is he's not indicating that. Down from there would be a 6. Sounds pretty good over the E, but a different sound entirely, which would change the dynamic of the melody. We're losing our points at that point. We're drifting off. And then if we went to here, just a total sour grape note over that chord, right? And then if we went to there, that would work, but it's a 5, and we've lost the energy of that solo. It kind of like a period at the end of a sentence, which is not what he wanted to do at that point. This line just continues right over the next chord changes. So he went, which was making like a train heading toward a derailment. If you were somewhere where trains always went by and you didn't really notice them, but one day a train is coming by really fast heading toward a derail, you would look. Creates interest, creates you to focus on what he's actually doing, and then back on the track, save the day. So, and with contrary motion, just makes it great. So there's that part, a long-winded explanation of the Jerryism there, which I think deserved a good bunch of focus. So right away he goes, now right there we're all the way to the E, but before that we've got to go where we are in the chords is we've gone from we got to the B and we went that took up all of our beats over the E. Now we're going to get to the B, and the chords are kind of changing, and he's got a line going over that kind of moment where the chords are changing, which is the part where I was alluding to that he's playing over the chord changes. So how does he get that done? He's gone for the last beat of E. Now it goes da na 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 na. So what is that? He's using that step, which is part of the F, but we're getting to the B. We're going toward the B to start that loop again. I'm pretty sure that's where we are. It doesn't really matter, but well, it sort of does. But trying to get this done. He goes. So that's the step into the B, B, B. Those are other notes, but I'm alluding to the chord he's catering to, so it's kind of like he starts at the step, which is part of the F, B note, which is B, steps back to the F, more contrary, bouncing back and forth motion over, you don't have to use a wide variety of notes to do this. He's basically using the same notes he was just using, just to go once over, just do contrary motion. Is the next part, and this is where I think this is really cool. So we got, that's where that starts. So he goes, this note here is part of the F arpeggio. And this part, these two notes, are part of the B. So he's really just magnifying B and F. But the cool thing is I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure he ends on this F while there's the last note of that B. So there's a little bit of tension there, but since that the chord is going to that F, that becomes a release note. It's totally acceptable in the new chord. So that's kind of totally a cool thing to do, to add some tension without some real outside color tone. Using an inside tone, just use a chord tone from the upcoming chord that's not in the current chord. So, but it's next to the current chord tones, or right in the middle. Is the next bit. Now, I want to also, that line goes like this. It's all one long line as it's played, but I break it down mentally into 3 different little categories as I learned it to make it easy, and it kind of shows actually where the mechanics of how this is working over the chord tones. So once again, so I'm going to go over, I'm going to play that, and I'm going to call out the chord tones. B, 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 F, that's the F, that's still over B, F, 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 B, F, B, it's more like that's also in the B, but that's also in the, that's a chord tone of the E coming up, which is kind of still happening over the F, or the B. Oh, that's shared by B and F, so he goes, so we're in a combined chord tone from where we're coming from and where we're going. That steps over the F real quick, but then resolves to the E, and there we are at the similar riff to what we did in the beginning, because we're at that same part where the E and the A are conjoined as a relative unit of chords. And there he goes. I believe if you listen to it really slow, he throws that note in there. It's pretty, it's part of the F, it's bouncing from the A to the next 2 for the A. Or you can consider that B is in the E, so he's lead to the E, back in E. Then we're going to the F, so all he has to do is slide that straight up and down E shape into the straight up and down F shape. Now, really quick here, to avoid, it's really the similar chord progression that we just soloed over. So he wants to be a little different here, so he goes really quick and pulls this out. Well, all that is he just nailed the B arpeggio, which is where that he did that for the F, and when it went, he went, and then it kind of bounced some motion in between the B and the F. He went. on the B there. Now we're back at the E doing the same thing. As soon as he hits the E, he does the same thing. Cool, but we need to do something different since we got into the E and nailed it the same way. Now what he does here is another just really cool thing. And something that you can do instead of the Jerryism where we were before. He does this instead. He goes. How could you come up with that? Well, that's part of harmonizing in sixths. I believe I got a lesson somewhere on my channel. If I was a great YouTube producer, I would say, hey, go to the video that's going to pop up right here on the side. Well, it's something I'm going to figure out later. I'm slow like that with this YouTube stuff, so it comes out of this, which is let's hear this for musicality, just real quick. Hear how musical that sounded? Because that was harmonizing in sixths. There's a pattern that you can go all up and down the neck with that stuff. He's just using a little chunk of that. And the cool thing about that is tension and release. So he goes, comfortably nails the E chord. Then he goes, the next part of that harmonization goes. Now those notes, as far as the E chord goes, are a 4 and a 2. As you know, a suspended chord, you can have a suspended 4, you can have a 2 that suspends it. As long as you're not using a 3 in a chord and you're using a 4 or a 2, you've suspended that chord. You've suspended the major and minor from appearing in that chord. So that's what that does. He goes, so it wouldn't want to end there because now you're in suspense on the 4 and the 2, and it slides right up to the, what's after a 2? The major 3. And what's after the, that would be the, that's the 3rd of E, the 4 of E, that's the 5, so that's where that's where I had a little hiccup there. So we go to the, slide up to the 5, and back to the major 3rd of the chord. So 5, nice period at the end of a sentence, the 5 of a chord, and the 3rd for that extra, like, hey, we're on the chord here. Back in the chord tone, back to resolve from tension, or suspense. So suspense and resolve. So now we're back to the, and from here you can probably start going, oh, okay, so well, if we did that, must be the F chord plan. And here we can take a break because once again it's going to go to the E. So now we're in I will get by. No lyrics, it's the solo, but the I will get by. It's kind of a break. All he does is just nail the E for that, since it's a different verse that's getting a different treatment. So to outline that treatment, it doesn't do a whole lot of stuff over the E. It just goes, parks there for a while. Then, well, we need to do something. So how about some stepwise motion? Back to the F, stepping right through the F and the B chord tones. B, or E, B, F. Now those aren't once again, not the notes that we're playing, but the chords that they're kind of covering. E, B, F, B, F. Grace the strings up that. There's some kind of doubling up here he does to take up some space there. I kind of, when I'm playing in the middle of the solo, I can catch it. I don't know slowly exactly what it is, but it's like, it's a jumble of those same notes. Something, get back up to that E. Now, after you've done that twice, you've done the I will get by 1, it's the final I will get by. The A, E, F. So we got to cover that A and E real fast, and this is where those other two A and E triad shapes I showed you come in. Very easy once you get the hang of it. He goes, just got to be ready for it to come out. Start at the top of that shape, then go from the high strings to the low strings on the E shape. So the first one was the A shape for the A chord, E chord, F chord. You guys a little suspension thing here. To take up a little time, then we're just back to the EA thing, FB thing. It's a lesson to me. G minor, D, C sharp, F sharp, B, E for blues, and F. More than we're covering in this solo, but the solo examination chord tone thing. But I thought that would be cool to go over. So it's basically why you can see why these chord tone bits work way better to cover that solo than thinking some kind of scale stuff that may or may not hit these magic pop out notes, which are the chord tones, is what you're hearing. And the way to get there is to check out Bob Weir. What he's doing is he's outlining all these chords in the rhythm part that are going to happen during that Jerry's going to use in the solo, and you go from there. I got to run out of here, so I'm going to end the video here just to kind of keep it under an hour, which is great because the last one went a little ways over an hour. And I hope you found this more concise, better than the last one, and with a little more information on what was going on. Remember, if you like this content, the best thing you can do to help this channel, because it really isn't going anywhere. It's been a long time that I've had this channel, and lots of information there about not doing anything with the channel. But subscribe, hit the like button if you're like, hey, at least that was kind of cool. I learned something. At the very least, leave with hitting the like button. But subscribe, because I'll try to do more of this as much as I can, and you can leave a suggestion on some other song or solo you'd like to learn, and we'll go from there. I thank you for watching. We're going to duck down so you guys can see my face as I wave goodbye, and have a good day. We'll see you soon. I hope you enjoyed.